This is the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, the biggest, most fun podcast in the galaxy. We're Adina, Brian, Cris, and Steve, and we love talking all things science fiction. This is Season 4, but our human adventure is just beginning as we gather around our computer consoles to discuss the science fiction of film, television, and literature. Join us on our quest for fun and fascination as we go where no podcast has gone before. Everyone has permission to come aboard the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, but make sure to find your seat fast because we're taking off in 3, 2, 1. Hit it. This podcast is a part of the Trek Geeks Network.
Who's the greatest? That is a question we always will debate and discuss. Is Sandy Koufax the greatest pitcher in baseball? Is Muhammad Ali the greatest boxer? Is Tom Brady the greatest NFL player? Is the Big Sci-Fi Podcast the greatest podcast of all time?
Woo-hoo!
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yes.
No question. No question. See, 3 out of 3 say yes. But in the world of sci-fi movies or movies in general, who is the greatest director of all time? That gets a bit sticky. By box office take, the greatest is Steven Spielberg at $10.68 billion in gross sales. And number 2 is the person and his films we'll be discussing today, James Cameron. James comes in at $8.7 billion. But is he really number 2? It took Spielberg 39 films to reach that number, an average of $274 million per film. But James only has directed 9 films to reach his lofty number, average about $967 million per film. So does that make Cameron number 1? Today, we are going to talk about James Cameron's movies, specifically science fiction films, and determine, in our humble opinions, is he as great as all get out? So, to get things rolling, it's time for roll call of the Big Sci-Fi Podcasters. And as I like to do it, let's do an alphabetical order, but we will have a blank in the middle. So go ahead, Adina.
Hey, everybody. The only thing I want to say is that I'm currently basking in the glow of being an author who's completed a series since we last talked.
Yes.
4th book of my series has come out. That's it. I had to mention that.
Was today launch day?
It was yesterday. By the time people are hearing this, it's been a little bit from then. And that's cool. And it's out. It's done. I'm on to other things. And yeah.
Ooh. Can we get a sneak peek of what you're working on next?
Maybe it will involve more robots. I can tell you that.
Okay.
I promise not to go by book 4 and then read the last page. Okay. I will.
Oh.
I have a terrible tendency of doing that. I can't
That's
wait
a big
for the
step.
end. I know. I usually run right to the end. Okay. So what? Ruby is what? No.
Let me ask you a question about that, because that's a worthwhile point of, so if a book has an afterword, and I don't know if you noticed, but all 3 of my books now the 4th one has an afterword. Is it the last page of the afterword or the last page of the book proper?
I usually look at the book proper, and then I might read that afterwards. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I'm very particularly proud of this afterword because it's my little spoiler alert. It's a bit of a 4th wall break, which I love 4th wall breaks. So.
Oh yeah, they're always fun.
Absolutely. It brings the audience into the film, or in this case, the book. Yes. In the book. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're missing Brian, the birthday boy, today. But by the time you're hearing this, it'll be after his birthday. So hopefully he's gotten a lot of wishes from everybody while we're recording this.
We're doing time breaks today.
Yes. And of course, the fabulous Mr. Fox.
Mr. Fox, Chris Fox here. I'm just happy to be here. I'm working on film school stuff, so that's been taking up a lot of time. But I'm realizing that I love writing scripts. I'm enjoying Celtics, and I have a bunch of ideas that I'm now formulating back and forth. So keep working on that.
I owe you the link to the site for script writing software, and I will get that to you. Thanks for reminding me. Yes. Yeah. So, and for myself, hey, it's just another Wednesday, but that's okay because again, this will be late, but my grandson's turning 5 this weekend.
Oh.
I am super jazzed to go down and visit with him. So,
Cool.
yes, but of course, this will be sometime afterwards. So, okay, well, without any further ado, let's discuss the films of James Cameron. Now, James learned his craft at the feet of the great Roger Corman, the godfather of cheap, quick, and cheesy sci-fi and horror films. He made such great films as Little Shop of Horrors, the original black and white, and Bucket of Blood, and he did, I think, Laser Blast and films like that were all done cheaply, but he was where a lot of young directors went to learn their craft from, and I think Mr. Cameron learned well, considering that his first films were made on the cheap, but were successful. So, to mention his films, since there's only 9 in the genre of horror, his first film was Piranha 2: The Spawning. Never seen it. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch it. I'm not a horror guy.
Love story film was, of course, Titanic, his first major success in films. He did make one action adventure film, a wonderful movie called True Lies. If you've not seen it, for shame. It is Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis at their funniest.
Is this You're Fired? Is that where that comes from? Was that True Lies, or am I thinking of a different movie?
I think it's a different movie. In True Lies,
you mean the line "You're fired"?
Or just like, I guess not that it comes from that, but like there's like the fame. I shouldn't. It's like one of his one-liners where he like fires a rocket and the guy's on the rocket or something, and he's like, "You're fired."
You're
he's just being
right. Yes,
Arnie.
I believe at the end of the movie when he fires a rocket from a hovering aircraft, one of the yes, I think he says that line. That's the tagline. But and then into sci-fi films, he's made The Terminator, Aliens, The Abyss, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, Avatar, The Way of Water, with number 3 and number 4 avatars coming out at some time in the future. So looking over these films in those particularly sci-fi movies, I have a question real quick. Which ones have you seen? And have you seen the other films that he's made as well? I'll start with you, Adina.
So I think out of the list of 9, I have not, it's easier to say what I've not seen, which is Piranha 2.
Yeah.
And I have not seen the recent Way of Water. So when we were preparing for this episode, I was like, oh, I should go just stream it. And it's not on streaming yet. Like, I'm now spoiled. I'm like expecting to see anything that was in the theater recently to automatically be available streaming. And it's like, no, not for another month or 2. So I'm like, well, that kind of destroys my plans. But I was also surprised to learn. So I guess up until recently, I've never really paid, when I was a kid watching movies, or a teenager watching movies, or young adult watching movies, I was aware of Spielberg. I was at some point aware of James Cameron. I think I became aware of him when the Titanic came out, but I was never terribly aware of directors. So I'm now surprised to learn that. So James Cameron did Aliens, but not Alien.
Correct. Yes.
And I kind of wanted to spend some time thinking about that. And that's an interesting thing to do, switch directors for a major feature film. Mm-hmm. Is that weird? Is that a weird thing to do? I don't even know. I don't know.
Also, he jumped into Piranha 2, which is weird.
Yeah.
Again, he didn't do Piranha 1.
And I don't even know what Piranha 1 is. I mean, I'm imagining piranhas literally in water snapping at you. And it not being good. But I think, Cris, you mentioned not being terribly into horror. Again, horror is not my thing too much either.
Mm-hmm. But again, it's, every director has to get going somewhere.
Sure.
And so I didn't really look into see if that came out of Roger Corman's studios, if that's where he had made that film or not. But, as I said, you've got to start somewhere. And since he made Piranha 2, would only follow that he will also make Aliens, the second film as well.
I guess. I don't know how that follows.
Yeah.
I mean, well, and Aliens is borderline horror. Aliens is borderline horror as well. It's we consider it sci-fi, but come on, that's kind of horror movie,
No, the first one without question.
Yeah.
And here's an interesting. I was talking to my wife about it, and she said, when it came out, what was the big tagline from the film?
In space, can no one hear you scream?
Yeah.
Correct. But when the movie was being promoted, all you ever saw was the alien egg and that phrase underneath it, and that was it. So, they really pulled you in. Whereas this one, you already knew about Ripley, you knew about her character, you knew about the alien, you knew what its capacity was. He just amped it up and made it more of a military film, and a battle between humans and aliens. So he took someone's original concept and just brought it up to another level. And in many cases, I do like the second one better because there's more character development. You get to know who Ripley is. You get some background story. And
first one, you get Ash, though.
Ash is, yes. But see,
I mean, and that to me is part of what really solidifies it as an interesting science fiction film. Although there was android in Aliens too, wasn't there? Yeah.
But
Bishop,
you wouldn't.
Bishop.
But Bishop. But you wouldn't understand why they feared Bishop.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen, if you don't know about Alien.
That's true.
That's why. So so you have to watch them in order to really get the appreciation of them.
We get it. Goes back to release date, as we always talk about.
Yes, that's always my thing. Always watch and read things in the order that they came out. Now you can sometimes skip things. You can skip some things if you don't have to watch all 7 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation. You can skip some episodes, but you got to watch the key ones in order.
Yes. And so, Cris, any of the ones listed or that you know of that you've seen of James Cameron?
I know. Okay, so Terminator 2, Avatar. I did see Titanic as a kid. I need to go back and rewatch it. And I feel like I've seen bits and pieces of Aliens. I got to go back and watch those.
You've never seen Aliens completely?
Never seen it completely.
Wow.
So I need to go back and actually not to watch it through, but actually watch it from start to finish.
And there's a one where there's a regular theatrical release and the director's cut.
Ooh.
And the director's cut adds about 20 minutes to the film, a very important background story that was not
Aliens.
Yes.
So it helps. So is it worth?
Oh God, yes.
Watching the directors or the theatrical?
No, I have seen. I saw it in the theater when it came out, as it was, and then when the director's cut came out, it was first available only on a device known as a laser disc.
Ooh, I've always wanted to actually see a laser disc.
I remember that.
Yeah, my friend Doug Sloan had a laser disc of that movie, and I always wanted to see it. But then finally, they did release it on DVD, and in that particular package, you get both films. You can watch either the theatrical or the director's cut. And even when you watch the director's cut, James Cameron does a little opening saying, how much better the movie is because this was added in. Again, when you're in the theater, they can only have, there wasn't a time of Endgame where we can just sit in the theater for 3 or 4 hours and watch a movie. They wanted to keep it tight and concise.
The good old days.
I do like concise.
I do too.
I mean, I do enjoy the 2-hour, 3-hour movies, but it's if you can get an hour, 2-hour movie that's
90 minutes. 90 minutes.
I love watching Trek. It's that's what, an hour and a half? It's perfect.
Well, and the original Star Wars, original Star Wars, and Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Oh, those are.
But all those trilogies are so, just so well crafted. They're concise. You go in, you get out.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I've seen all of them except for Piranha 2, which my heart is not broken because of that. And when Titanic came out, I thought, oh, this is just an overblown movie. It's not going to do very well. And I was completely wrong about that.
Titanic was amazing. And I mean, I feel like we just, always that the story of Titanic has just always been there in our culture. And I remember, so Steve, you probably, I don't expect Cris, you to remember this, But Steve, do you remember sometime in the 1980s when they located the Titanic and they did like a live hauling up of the safe, and it was a Riviera was like they were opening it live on TV, and that was like a big TV event.
I think that was Al Capone's safe.
No, this was the Titanic, because I remember they, talking about how they found it and all those things. Now, there was something else with Al Capone too.
But I think they must have done, but
because I can still picture
Rivera must have done both. Yeah,
I can still picture like the water falling off out of it and everything like that. Yeah, I mean, I think those two events might have happened within a year or two of each other, because they were like, it was a big television event. To having to see this.
Were they going to find the necklace in there, even though it was fabricated for the movie only? But
yeah, they didn't. Well, that's it. They didn't know what they were going to find. And I think they just had it was like wads of cash that were just like mushed together. That's kind of what I have. I wonder if there's like on YouTube. Well,
there must be.
I might
we should find that.
Like find this like while we're talking. I might be like looking in the background.
Well, that's where his love of deep sea investigation came about, which got him to make the movie The Abyss, and allowed him also, I think I wrote it down here or not, but he actually went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the ocean, on his own in a submersible. So he was very well versed in underwater filming when he made The Abyss, and that also came about of his investigation and helping out to find the remains of the Titanic. So that kind of led into making that particular movie.
So I get what you see.
I
found, well, this isn't quite what I remember, but maybe it is, and I'll watch it later. But it's a October 28, 1987, Telly Savalas, another name I haven't heard in a bazillion years, hosted Return to the Titanic live from Paris, France. This was a rare television special and also an interesting detailed documentary, which requires blah, 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 blah. Features footage of artifacts and relics retrieved in an expedition to the ship. But I seriously remember Geraldo Rivera. Am I saying it right? Geraldo.
The name
Geraldo Rivera.
Oh,
I think it's a mouthful. And
Titanic live safe opening.
Here we are talking about Titanic, and not a science fiction
but
film.
That was
but that's okay. It's important in the development of him as a director, because the success of that led to his ability to make other films, such as Avatar and Avatar 2, which were very expensive films to make, but of course also have returned a tremendous amount of money. I mean, I think The Way of Water has gotten to over $2 billion very quickly. I mean, the pent up demand. I thought that being so long from when Avatar came out to Avatar 2 came out, that the audience was like, well, this is so old, forget it. But no, they were waiting to go see it. And I can say that, Avatar 2 was very good. It's, again, visually an amazing film, bordering on animated. There's some way they shot the live action footage, the way they ran it through the computer, digitizing it almost looks like a video game. Very interesting, but you'll see it. You'll have your own opinions and so on.
I need to go and watch that.
Yeah. So and then again, as other films, True Lies, a hilarious take on the spy films, and where Arnold Schwarzenegger plays what seems like an average about man who is married just with a boring wife and daughter, and he's actually this super secret agent. It's very funny and really well done.
It's a really good movie if people haven't seen that.
Yeah,
yes, I haven't seen it. Now that we're talking about that one, it's been a while since I've seen it. And Jamie Lee Curtis, that was one of her top films. She does a striptease in it that makes women laugh. Yeah,
because she's so clumsy, and it's like it just
best.
takes the edge off of it. It takes the edge off of it completely, but it's really well. And he's great because here's a guy who truly loves his wife and he
Mhm.
thinks she's having an affair, and
Mhm.
he realizes, he's done all these terrible things as an agent, but he can't deal with the fact that his wife might be with somebody else. So it's really one worth watching. But let's start off with his first successful science fiction film. That is The Terminator. You've both seen it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. As I
What were
have.
your thoughts about it when you saw it, or what did you think about it when you watched it?
Well, I'm going to say, oh, go ahead, Cris.
Because it's a robot.
Oh, I was going to say, just
Mhm.
watching it,
Mm-hmm.
just like imagining, it's like, what do you do in that situation when literally the Terminator is coming after you, and there's like, it's really well done, but it's a terrifying. I wouldn't say it's a scary movie, but when you think about that situation, it's like, whoa, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But in the time when it came out in the early 80s, I mean, that was something new that
Right.
people hadn't seen before. The cyborg in human skin
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
comes after you, and he is essentially unstoppable, of course. But what it actually is, which is amazing, it's one of these really beautiful love stories where the main character, Sarah Connor, and the soldier from the future that comes into the past to save her and protect her from being assassinated by the Terminator, how she doesn't trust him, she doesn't believe him, she doesn't know who he is, she's afraid. But as the story progresses, she falls deeply in love with him. And of course, in a weird way, they have her son, which is
Mhm.
the son that sends him back in time. So it's kind of a loop. Like if he doesn't send him back in
Yeah.
time, they can't make love so that he can be born. So in the future, he can send him back. So there's that kind of a weird time loop there.
So so the one thing in your description though is
Yeah.
like when you said her falling deeply in love with him, she likes him. She likes him a little. I don't.
She
I
feels
figured
sorry for him.
she feels something, but this
Mhm.
isn't like a massive, deep in love. This is,
But
Also
remember,
adrenaline too. Like,
yes,
yeah.
but then
yes.
remember, he's the what's Reese, I think was his name. Yeah,
Mhm,
Reese
yeah.
is the character.
Yeah, Reese.
He says, I came back in time to save you, because he was given the picture
Uh-huh.
and he fell in love with the picture before he even
Oh,
met her. And then
yeah,
and
he
then
had time. He had a lot of time to fall in love with her. She had
Right.
like a minute. She's
but
in the
she
moment.
could have refused him, but she
She could
doesn't.
have.
And
No, she doesn't.
yeah,
She likes
yeah,
him.
yeah.
But this isn't like a mad deepening. She barely knows the guy. This is a passion thing.
Love at first sight? I don't know. Anyway.
I don't think it's love at first. I think it's
No.
okay. Well, you're kind of attractive. There's a robot chasing me.
Yes.
Cyborg,
Yeah.
you're gonna
Well,
help me out.
I mean,
you're
that's
not bad hard to
you
look
know,
at.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about and complain about, and I agree with this concept of in books and movies and TV shows like insta love, where
Mhm.
people fall in love a little too quickly. That's
Mhm.
and it's usually they portray it as like the woman falling madly in love instantly with the guy, and I do have
Mhm.
some issues with that because that's not usually takes a lot longer than that. But now again, having some passion and in the heat of the moment, there's attraction, there's sparks, there's passion. Sure.
Mhm.
But she's not deeply in love with this guy.
Enough to bear his child.
Oh, sure.
So
I mean,
that
people-
that child can send him back in time so he
Yes.
can make it sense.
Yes.
That's a weird time loop there.
Well, but
Yeah, the time
she
loop thing is
certainly,
cool.
yes, she certainly, comes to, she loves her child that she,
Mhm.
winds up having. There's no doubt about that. And then
Mhm.
of course she understands that he has to survive to make it all happen,
Mhm.
which
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, like I saw Terminator. So Terminator 2 came out when I was in high school.
Mhm.
And when I saw it, I was aware of Terminator 1, but I don't think I had completely seen the entirety of Terminator 1 from beginning to end. Just because, so when the timing of, Terminator 1 came out, I was too young to watch it. So I would have seen it either on like maybe like a Showtime cable or VHS tape. And I'm because the thing is, after watching Terminator 2 in the theaters, which I did, I was like, I gotta go back and watch this movie, like to really process what I had seen, because I didn't completely know all the things. So this is a case where, and this is one of the reasons why I do believe in all cases you see things in order, because when you don't, you're like, eh.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
Confusing.
But for me, this was circumstantial. Again, I was too young when Terminator 1 came out, and back then we did not have instant access or easy access to everything all the time. So things were a little bit more circumstantial than they are right now.
And in the second film, Terminator 2, the Terminator is out to protect the man that he was sent to destroy in the first film.
Oh, I love Terminator 2.
Yeah.
That's what I can rewatch all the time. Whenever it's on, it's like, I'm going to watch Terminator 2 now.
Yeah.
Do you know that they also shot a separate ending where it's a happily ever after?
No, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, it was on a DVD, I think, or it might have been a VHS tape that a friend of mine had. We watched it, and it was the alternate end where when she goes to the end, at the end, and she goes to the playground, everything is fine.
Really?
So he did shoot a happily ending version, but it was never released.
Well,
yeah, I remember
because I don't know if that would have actually worked, and I feel like it certainly wouldn't have really led to Terminator 3.
Right, exactly.
But do people like Terminator 3? Are people fond of that? I haven't seen. So I have huge what's the word? Blind spots when it comes to that, because I feel like I've seen Terminator 1. I like 2 a lot. I've seen the recent one that came out. I don't think I saw the third one, and I didn't see Genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did not see Genesis. I did not see that other one that you're talking about, which but
there's
I did
Terminator 4.
I did see 3, The Rise of the Machines, and it was okay. It was kind of like, Terminator 2 was because especially that twist of him coming back to protect Sarah Connor, that was a huge twist. And then after that, it just became kind of, okay, we're going to another action film. We're just continuing the story. They didn't have that kind of awesomeness anymore. So I saw Terminator 3, but it was okay.
Yeah, I like Terminator 3. I like the story, learning about how John Connor meets his wife and how they develop their relationship and how they survive at the end. So he becomes the leader of humanity at the end of the film, when they're inside a military, like a NORAD type of underground facility. I liked it again, and it also expanded on the theme of a more dangerous, indestructible Terminator.
Yeah.
And again, that's the always interesting thing, because in the first film they destroyed the time machine, but in the second film there had to be a time machine that was working. In the third film there had to be a time machine that was working. In the fourth film, and blah blah blah. So there's a kind of a change in the storyline.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I always get confused with that. Sorry.
Well,
because don't they I'm blanking on the name. What's the name of the evil organization?
Skynet.
Skynet. Don't they destroy Skynet in Terminator 2? Or the guy that
remember they save one of his arms, I think. Yeah. And they have the chip in there, and that's how the guy is able to proceed, as opposed to having destroyed all the evidence or the information and all the parts and everything.
Now we're getting away from a little bit the fact that James Cameron, because he ended with Terminator 2. He did Terminator and Terminator 2. He did not direct any of the rest of the movies.
No,
right. So right. You were off topic.
No, but that's okay because one leads to another, and how, because what he did in Terminator 2 affected Terminator 3 and so on. So you kind of did that. But and I'm going to get into the thing that we were talking about earlier before we started the podcast, is where does the great ideas come from? Now, James Cameron claims that the concept and idea of the story of the Terminator came to him in a dream about a cyborg from the future coming into the past to, do what he was going to do. However, when I saw it in the theater, much like the great Harlan Ellison, when he saw it in the theater, went, hey, wait a minute. I've seen this story before. Where have I seen it before? Oh, yes. From the Outer Limits from 1964-65, two episodes that Harlan Ellison wrote. One, Soldier, about a soldier from the future that comes into our current time and has to protect a family. And Demon with the Glass Hand, about a story of invasion of aliens in the future, and they send a cyborg back into the past with all of humanity on him. And you see how he finds out that he is actually a robot when he thinks he's a human being. And when Harlan Ellison saw it in the movie, in the theater, he reacted the same way. I've seen this story before. And he immediately, of course, did what he does best, like you said, Adina. He contacted his attorneys and said, hey, wait a minute. You stole my idea, James Cameron.
Yeah. But now I feel like Harlan Ellison did that to like everyone and everything. Well, and partly it's like, he was very prolific. So, and this is the thing, is like where like at some point, all creators are the sum of everything that they've taken in. So, there's this whole like thought of there aren't any new ideas. It's just how you retell them. Right. So, and so I went through the article that you had, where the guy did a examination of the whole story, and he compared the Outer Limits episodes to the Terminator and was like, yeah, there's some similar elements, but it's different. And so I don't know, my take on it is, okay, but everyone's stuff draws a little element from here, a little element from here, a little everyone. So, and it's kind of like along those lines. It's nothing egregious.
But it was enough for him. And again, if in the article where Cameron claims, or someone claims that Cameron said to him, oh yeah, I stole these ideas from Harlan Ellison,
or inspired by, I feel like it's a better.
So the quote, so James Cameron saying that sounds like something that, that's hallway talk that you just kind of say. Like, yeah, I got my ideas from Gene Roddenberry. I got my ideas from Star Trek. It's not
like what about the Orville?
Right.
You're absolutely right.
And Harlan Ellison was someone who would sue people at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
So
the only thing came out of it is that now when you watch the movie, there is a line that they added into the credits that say with acknowledgement of the works of Harlan Ellison. Did he get any money out of the deal? I don't know. But the production company felt like they better just settle with Harlan, even though James Cameron did want them to do it, but he did. Yeah. So well, and what you just said, there's no new ideas. If going back to the 1950s, if you didn't have the Honeymooners and I Love Lucy, you wouldn't have situation comedy today. Because that was the beginning of it, and everyone has stolen from that.
It's not stealing.
Not steal. You're right. I'm sorry.
Your take on a concept.
Yes.
Right.
But yeah, and nobody's going to sue, anyone to say, oh, you're stealing from the Honeymooners. You stole from I Love Lucy. No, it's not the case. But it's just that if you wasn't for those original ideas, you may not have had a future idea.
But that's true. I mean, like everyone's a sum of their experiences and everything that has been input into their brain.
Not that there's anything wrong, because we end up with a great movie, The Terminator, and we ended with another great movie, Terminator 2. So, Harlan, if you're happy, fine. You're not with us anymore, sad to say.
He's dead.
So, yeah.
He's been dead for a long time.
Yes. So with that in mind, it's like, okay, but it's just interesting where, ideas come from.
And I think his estate, his writings are now managed or owned, I don't know what the proper terminology is, by J. Michael Straczynski of Babylon 5 fame.
Oh, really?
And
there's the whole situation there too.
I listened to the audiobook of J. Michael Straczynski's autobiography, I don't know, sometime within the last year, and he talked a lot about Harlan Ellison and how he was inspired by Harlan Ellison, as was a bazillion other science fiction people, like bazillion other science fiction people. But then he came to know him a little bit. And then when Harlan passed, he got like I said, don't know what the right legal term is, but he's in possession of, manages, owns, whatever the right word is.
Okay.
All of Harlan's writings. Yeah.
Listen, if you think about it, everyone owes H.G. Wells a debt of gratitude because he was the one who wrote The Time Machine. And here we are with movies constantly about the time machine.
Right. And I think that it wasn't like H.G. Wells. I think there were mentions of the concept of time machines in literature even before H.G. Wells.
Yeah.
So
did H.G. Wells steal
who do we
from
really,
somebody?
like who do we really owe anything? So if everyone who mentions time travel, do they have to give, H.G. Wells' estate a penny?
Yes, exactly.
No, at some point it gets right. It gets a little ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, it gave us a couple of really good films. Now, I've always noticed, and it was even mentioned in the TV show Abbott Elementary. Avatar has so many touches to Disney's Pocahontas. If you ever watch the two next to each other, you see a lot of references to Pocahontas in it.
Can I mention another little film that I think is a lot like that we all, because remember, all roads lead back to this one franchise.
What, really? I've never heard of it before. Go ahead.
Never heard of it. Star Trek Insurrection.
Oh my Lord. I've never heard of Star Trek. My goodness. Tell me all about it. No, go ahead.
Well, so basically, there was this gentleman named Gene Roddenberry.
Look, again, still a fresh take on something that's out there. The theme being you have a culture that's either less advanced or insular or something like that, and then you're coming into that culture to do something. Okay, sure, yes, Pocahontas is that. Yes, Insurrection is like that. Yes, Avatar is like that.
Criticism towards Avatar.
Right. Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying. Is like this isn't. It's okay for things to ring familiar of other things. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're absolutely right. And that's how you get inspired to create different versions of something that you're inspired by it. Yes, no one from Disney has gone to James Cameron and said, cease and desist order, you stole from us.
Right.
Because that's not the case. It's not at all.
And I don't know. I mean, and again, I don't know where some of the legalities or things like the lines are drawn, but there's Pocahontas, the movie and the movie script. But Pocahontas, the story is not owned by that's a story in our culture. That's not owned. Yeah. Disney did not invent the story of Pocahontas. They just wrote the script for that movie. Avatar is clearly not that script. So yeah.
But what blew me away in Avatar is when I was watching the movie, and when they mentioned the element that they were seeking from the planet. In the 1990s, I dealt with a precious metal trader by the name of Lenny Kaplan. Wonderful gentleman. Lenny Kaplan. Nice guy. And he one time said to me, this is in the 1990s, he said to me, you know what the most valuable thing in the world is, Steve? And I went, what, Lenny? As a precious metal. He said, unobtainium, because it's unobtainable. And there I'm watching the movie, and they're looking for unobtainium. And I'm going, holy schmoly. Lenny Kaplan, if he saw it, probably said, that's my line. But again, it's just a joke. Yeah. He said it's a joke, and there's no similar relationship, but it is interesting how the thought process goes from one person, maybe that's an ongoing joke that's been around for a long time, and James Cameron decided to plug it into the movie.
No, it has. And I was kind of funny. I thought it was funny that they chose to do that. I thought that was a little ridiculous because it's a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can't they come up with like a different name for it? Because they're trying to that's it's on the nose.
Yeah. Yes. And again, maybe we've named new elements that have been discovered on the periodic table. Maybe someone will choose to name one unobtainium as a joke, and maybe that will become the name of something. But I feel like in a science fiction movie, it was a little too. It broke you out of it. It took you out of the story.
Like the movie, yes, there's funny parts in the movie, but it's not meant to be a comedy. It's not like a spoof. So if it was a spoof, I could see them intentionally calling it unobtainium. I can't even say it.
But in a non-spoof, it breaks you out of the movie.
It's like, wait, what? Did they just say that? Say that again?
Yeah,
that's what I felt when I saw it done. I went, come on. Now, here's another film where there is a director's cut of it. and they add a lot of missing scenes, and you get more of a backstory of why. I can't remember the main character's name, who was the injured or wheelchair-ridden soldier, but you find out why he's crippled, what happened to him, why he's so angry about his brother, why, what was his, why he was able to get on the mission in the first place. Sometimes too much is left on the cutting room floor or not included. That sometimes does make a difference. On its own, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, I mean, so they've got almost a 3-hour movie and they're adding more to it.
I was going to say, that's a very long
That's
movie.
why you watch it at home, so you can pause it and go to the bathroom or get yourself some more Doritos or licorice, right?
Especially licorice. Yeah. So now I want to go back to what Cris, I agree with what Cris said earlier. And this is one of those things where what I appreciate is when in a film, they can find ways to put that backstory in, a little sentence here, a little sentence there, without making a big thing about it. And you get, you can just, that brevity and that conciseness and kind of, and to the point where like there were a couple recent things in either Picard or Strange New Worlds, or I can't remember which series, where every now and then I'd hear a line and it would be like the littlest line, but it explains. And so like, in season 2 of Discovery, when we first see the new, Anson Mount's Captain Pike and the Enterprise, we see a 2022 version of 1960s Enterprise. And he's like, oh yeah, take out the hologram stuff. I can't stand that. In that one little thing, they did explain away all, stopped us from asking 1,000 questions.
Why isn't there a hologram or holodeck, right? Yes.
Right. So that was really like, I like when they do that. And I'm convinced that if they put the time and effort into it, and I say this not having ever made a movie before and having no idea how much effort it really is, but I believe that they could have, instead of having added 20 or 30 scenes, which explains all this, a key line here and there is enough.
Go ahead, Cris.
I guess we'll talk about this next time, but Back to the Future 1 specifically does such an amazing job of that first conversation at the McFly's house, where you learn everything you need to know about the characters and what is then going to be critical to the plot later in the movie, but they do it in a natural way. And so, yes, I agree. If you could just get a line here or there, you don't have to add 20 minutes to a 3-hour movie.
Right. Right.
But was that the original intention, was to film all this because you'd end up with a larger movie? You'd end up with something that makes, again, it makes Endgame seem like a short subject movie. It's nice to be, I think that's the beauty of the DVD or Blu-rays, Blu-rays, folks. We're in the 21st century. That's the beauty of Blu-rays, is that you can put in all this additional, and then you can decide to watch it or not, and you can, you can see, does it make a difference? It may not make a difference. You may say, the original film, that was fine on its own right, or you can watch the other added material and go, I see where this is missing or added to the movie, but you have the leisure of being able to, watch it at your own pace.
Well, if that added content makes such a big difference in the movie, was the movie really filmed well, like and cut well to begin with? That's true.
Yes.
Maybe, I mean, I know I have not seen it. I have not seen that extra content, and I liked the movie just fine. And I was okay not knowing more backstory. The movie worked without the backstory, and it's kind of cool sometimes to get backstory. I like backstory, but if it really is that impactful, then maybe the movie wasn't that good.
You got a good point there.
It's hard because I enjoyed it in the theater. I enjoyed the experience of watching it, but I have tried watching it at home, and it's just, I got to give it maybe another chance. But I just watched it like a bunch of times, like when it first came out at home, or maybe a year later. Like, okay, this isn't doing it for me. Yeah. But that experience was so special.
Yeah, I don't think I saw it in the theaters too. I was pregnant with Frank when I saw it in the theaters.
That shows how long it's been since that movie came out.
Started university.
That's how I measure time.
Was it first year university? It was 2009.
Yep.
The year.
But I haven't seen it. I don't think I've seen it since, other than I think it's come on like some, TV show, like sometimes you're flipping through the channel and it's on. So I've caught pieces of it, but I don't think I've watched the full movie. Ever since.
Well, I bought mine at a Blockbuster. That was fun. Well, it was like, oh, this is a movie that I vaguely liked. I'm going to buy it. It's cheap. It's a Blockbuster. We'll do it. And then just never got into it.
Well, when the movie first came out, we saw it in 3D.
Yeah.
And and that was, that made the movie really amazing. The colors, the images, the movement, it all really, really worked really well.
Oh, it was incredible.
So when it came back out, when they had a quick release before the Avatar: The Way of Water came out, we went and saw it at the theater one more time, but not in 3D. And it was still great, but seeing it in 3D just made it just pop. It really did.
Again, so is it if it requires, I guess, that pop, is it really that good of a movie?
Yeah.
And I think there is a contingent of people that really don't like the movie and don't think it's that good. And again, I'm kind of like, I liked it, but obviously not enough to keep watching it again and again,
Yeah, I enjoyed it for the first time. And maybe this is not Avatar's fault, but I do feel a little bit of resentment towards it because when Avatar was successful, every movie started doing 3D.
Yeah.
And not well. Yeah. And now we've kind of drifted away from that.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, because 3D sometimes it can be, if it's animated, it's good because you can see the layering. Its layering is really good, but when it's live action, it gets a little too much. It gets to be a little too much, and again, it's a novelty product.
Yeah.
Now 3D. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the name Avatar makes sense for the movie because he's in an Avatar.
But I see where you're going with this.
So this afternoon, Frank's like, "So what are you guys going to talk about in your podcast?" And I said, "Oh, well, we're going to talk about James Cameron films." And he's like, "What was that?" I was like, "Oh, well, Avatar," and he's like, "The Last Airbender."
Yeah.
I'm like, no, because that is currently one of Frank's favorite shows. And then he's like, well, you guys should talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender. And I'm like, but that's a fantasy TV series. And he's like, well, you can talk about fantasy too. So he might convince me to try to convince you guys to talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender.
We did do a whole episode of Lord of the Rings. So
we did.
Yes, we did. And I've never really watched Avatar: The Airbender. Either there was a movie and a series, I believe.
The movie, right? I heard. Avoid the movie.
I don't know anything about the movie, but Frank made me watch the series.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be fun to watch the series and the movie, but I've heard nothing but awful things about the movie. But the series
very, very was pretty good. And so Frank made me watch it, and we were watching The Legend of Korra, which is the follow-on series afterwards, which we're in the middle of too. And no, it is good. I do like it. I like that the motif of it's kind of anime, but it isn't like strong anime.
I see what you like.
But I like, even though I like strong anime. Yeah. Yeah.
But I hear Frank's thing though. It's like it was confusing because when Avatar came out, it's like, wait, does this have anything to do with the other Avatar?
Yes.
And I like The Last Airbender. No,
The Last Airbender came out first. It was there first. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Now, and that's something to something also I guess to think about is like Avatar: The Last Airbender, which came out almost 20 years ago. It still holds up, and the current generation, like I said, Frank and a lot of people still love that show. So that's holding up really well.
Yeah. So that's always the question. Is like, is it because I look at someone like George Lucas, where you say his technical mastery is there, maybe not so much with the writing, but those movies hold up in a way that Avatar doesn't hold up.
You're referring to New Hope, Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, we're talking about original Star Wars, universally.
Star Wars was only 90 minutes. You can easily watch that.
Yeah, true.
It's very easy to sit through it. Right.
And there's an example where George Lucas said, "Oh, I'm going to go add in the stuff I didn't put in the original movie." And no, it didn't help it.
No, it was not necessary.
It didn't help it. You don't need to see Han Solo stepping on Jabba the Hutt's tail. And it just you can really tell the difference, which is the computer generated stuff that was thrown in after the fact. So sometimes
Mhm.
it's best to leave well enough alone.
Yes.
Well, that's what I've heard about
Yes.
director's cuts, and that's why I'm curious to watch. Like, sorry, which one did you say? Was it T2 or was it the first one that has the director? No, sorry,
that
it's
was
completely different franchise.
Aliens.
Aliens that has the
Aliens,
director's
yeah,
cut.
Aliens had that director's cut
Mhm.
version. And
So-
so sometimes it is, like you said, leave well enough alone, you know. If that's
Yes.
what you
But other
wanted to put
times
out
it-
there, go ahead, you know. But,
Well, you were
Yeah.
you felt like you were about to start another like debate, Adina.
Well, not a debate, but I do have a question.
sure.
Like, I've never completely understand the concept of a director's cut. I say director's cut in quotes, because isn't the movie that makes it to the theater the director's cut? Like, is he or she not the person who is responsible for what we're seeing on the screen, or are there other forces at work?
Okay.
I've never really
always-
understood that concept of the director's cut.
Well, a perfect example of that goes back to 1986, the movie Brazil.
I love Brazil.
Okay. You know,
I
there
love
were
Terry
two
Gilliam.
versions that was in the theaters of that movie. The
I know
original
that?
version that came out that Terry Gilliam,
Terry
right?
Gilliam, yeah, from
Terry
Monty
Gilliam
Python.
made,
Yeah.
where it ends on a very dark, sad level, right?
Yeah.
I believe it was Paramount who was the people behind the movie. They did not like that. And so they recut the movie and made it a happy ending. And that is panned by critics.
You know, I did know about that. It's been a long time since I've thought about that. I don't think I knew the order or something about that, but I think I was aware that there were different endings for
So
it.
there was a so the director's cut is the Terry Gilliam film
Mhm.
that he put out that I saw originally in the theater when it first came out.
Mhm.
And then I heard about the corporate version. And I
Yeah.
believe I've seen bits and pieces of that, and it's not a good
Yeah.
movie.
So I guess is it true that what we typically will see in a theater, that is after the director has their final say in the product, and then
Mhm.
other people get their hands on it, and these other
I
people are
think s-
responsible for what we really ultimately see?
I
It would
think
be
so.
yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I always had the feeling that it's either the studio doesn't like something that was already there, or they're just cutting stuff out for time because they want to keep it concise. But like there's the other extreme. Why am I blanking on the movies? This is really embarrassing. Justice League, and then the Zack Snyder cut. Like that was a whole other
Oh, yes.
thing, which I'm not sure the story behind. Like I don't know why the studio didn't like that cut specifically.
Mhm.
But my
But then you
impression
were-
is always it's either cutting for time or the studio is not happy with certain things. So then the director will come out later and be like, here's the vision that I would have liked to have told.
I
Or
feel like that's
shown.
really weird, because I feel like that kind of degrades and maybe that's the whole bit with commercialization and quote unquote Hollywood and stuff like that, is
Mhm.
because I would like to think that the director is the person who is responsible for the product, or maybe, I don't know.
It's hard
Maybe-
because a lot of
You
times they're
would
making a
hope.
movie.
Mhm.
What's sorry?
No, as I say, you would hope that the director would be at the very end going, okay,
my stamp of
that's-
approval. Yes.
I
yeah.
I approve of it. Or
Yeah.
he might, the director might say, you guys can release it. My name will be on it, but I'm not happy with what you've done or what you've allowed the editing department to do with this film. It would be the equivalent of Adina going, well, here's my 4 robot books. I'm going to go back to the first one and go, something? I could have put more in the
Mhm.
first book, so I'm going to rewrite the first book
Well, actually, what
and
I
put
think
stuff into it.
I think a better analogy for that would be, and this is why I'm probably best suited to being an indie author, is if I wasn't an indie author, if I was getting published by a major publishing house, I wouldn't have control over the cover,
Mhm.
possibly even the name of the book, and a lot of edits. And I had this happen to me, and it's one of the reasons why I been very committed to being an indie author is because years and years ago I had a bad experience with a traditional publisher where I had published 2 books about the retail store I used to own. And they were kind of memoir-y like books. And I had self-published them. And a traditional publishing house picked them up and said, hey, we'd love to republish these together in one book. And I said, okay. I wasn't working on those books. I wasn't really marketing them. So to me, it was like, okay, a little extra money. Sure. Why not? But then in that process now, they changed the name to a name I did not like. They changed the cover to a cover I was okay with. And when they were re-editing it, again, some things were okay, some things not. At the end of the day, any argument we had, I lost. And especially because of the name of the book, it's there, it's on Amazon, it's under my name, but I don't promote it. I don't try to sell it. I don't do anything, mostly because I'm very unhappy with the name that that they chose for it.
That was given to it for, yeah.
Yeah. And so, as an indie author, the buck stops here. I'm responsible for every decision. And that's I'm happy with that. So if my books fail, it's not because someone else made a bad decision that I disagreed with. It's my decisions, So I guess the film industry is more like my traditionally published book model. I
think like that's what I've heard a lot, like especially if you're looking at like a big studio who they have to report to their shareholders, and the shareholders don't really know, from my understanding, don't really understand the film world or like understand what is actually enjoyable. So there's a lot of times where studios will just like make these decisions for films that will just not do well. Then the director's forced to doing the thing that the studio wants, even when the director themselves knows it's not the right call for the film. And that's, you see it all the time. And that's usually when you hear creative differences. When that happened.
So what I'm hearing is when we first see a film, we should not scream at the director. We should give the director some grace because maybe this is not what they wanted.
Yeah, because it's like the thing. It's like, yes, you can blame the director, but it's like, same thing. Like Shatner had a lot of other ideas, and there was budgetary issues. But there's just, I think sometimes we as consumers forget how much work goes into making a film. Like, I've been binging these little clips of, I think it's called The Empire of Dreams, which is if you bought like one of the older releases of the Star Wars films, there was a whole documentary about Lucas and all the 5 minute, all the films. And so like watching some of those and seeing all the work he put into episode 1, it's like, wow, you have to remember that there's like thousands of people involved. It's not just all Lucas. So I think you can't just always blame the director, I think is the point.
Yeah, that's
good.
Good.
Okay, we will be nice to directors. If we've ever been mean to directors, we're sorry.
No, they juggle a lot to get their product put out there.
And that's probably true for producers and for everyone in the whole.
And for poor writers that are on strike right now too.
Yes.
Who write something and they hand it to them and they go, "This is great, thank you." And then you see only 3 lines of your original dialogue of the film that you wrote, and you go, "But that's not the movie I made." But hey, whoever's paying for it, they're going to have the final say so. And so that's what happens. So I guess we're really getting into the final thing about, in total earnings. Yes, Steven Spielberg is number 1 and James Cameron is number 2. And just to give you a list of other directors who are in the top 10 of filmmakers who have been successful, you've got the Russo brothers.
Okay, for sure.
You've got Peter Jackson, who gave you some Lord of the something or other films. You've got Michael Bay.
The Transformers. Transformers.
God, well, yeah. Oh, that's right. He gave us Armageddon. What am I talking about? Great director. Excuse me.
Wait. Michael Bay also gave us. Oh, I guess, yeah. No, I was thinking. Okay, I'm thinking of someone else. Never mind.
Yeah,
My bad.
That's okay. David Yates, a name I'm not familiar with.
He was Harry Potter.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. Harry Potter. That's right. Christopher Nolan, who has made a multitude of different types of films that we love. Some guy named J.J. Abrams.
Never heard of
that guy.
I never heard him. A funny, weird-looking guy, Tim Burton. And then last number 10 is Ridley Scott. who gave us Alien to begin with, and here we are going. If it wasn't for Ridley Scott's work and the movie he made, you wouldn't have Aliens and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you really look at the work of James Cameron and the number of films he's released, is he really that good of a director, or he just made movies that appealed to people, that sold them, that got people to go back in line to see it over and over again? What do you final analysis of James Cameron? Let's put it that way.
I think final analysis is very good. It's hard to say who the best is, because I guess you'd have to, for one thing, I'd have to see Avatar 2 and see how much I enjoy it. But I don't know if there's a scientific way you can be like, how many movies did they make, and how many of those, like percentage wise, who has a higher percentage of positive reviews?
Right.
I don't know how you'd break that down.
Yeah. Or do you measure by, okay, how many Academy Awards does it get for writing or directing, or, you know, how many have they've received and so forth? I mean, yes, Spielberg's been extremely successful, but he's made a lot of movies, and he goes back a long way.
But assuming you're measuring success by money and the amount of money that the films have pulled in. And I don't know if that is necessarily the best measure of success in this.
Because I don't think so, because then you get like Michael Bay, who makes a lot of money off of the Transformers film. I like the first one a lot. Love the first one, but I can't deal with the other ones.
And a lot of other films he's made as well, which have been theatrical because they're easy to watch. You know, you watch Transformers and it's the same thing every time, over and over and over again. And except for Bumblebee, that was great. And that wasn't him. That was a very good Transformer film. But otherwise, yeah, there's a lot of, you know, they're popcorn movies.
Right. And a good film has to start with a good script. If you could have the best director on the planet, and if they're given a script that isn't the best or isn't great, they can't necessarily turn that into something good, where they could easily take a good script and screw it up.
Yes.
Right. So, you know, as I'm looking at these different directors, you know, so James Cameron, I think he's been almost right place, right time. He got some really good, he got a handful of really good scripts, and he didn't screw it up.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, that might not be entirely fair, because I know, right, there's a lot of work going into it, but, you know, Titanic could have come out a lot, you know, could have been bad. It was great. Titanic was fantastic. You know, Terminator 2 was fantastic. But then I go look at Steven Spielberg's list. And okay, maybe these were not the highest grossing films individually, but these were amazing films, each in its own right, and very individually. What?
E.T. Yeah. Can I mention E.T.? We had a very long discussion about that on the weekend.
Yeah.
E.T. is a great film. Raiders of the Lost Ark was a great film. Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Jaws. The Color Purple. You know, oh my God. I mean, like, there's so many. Again, the first Jurassic Park movie, Schindler's List.
Yep.
You know, like, there are amazing movies, like, over and over and over again. He's got these great things.
And one of his greatest films was on television. Duel. Have you ever seen Duel?
I have not seen that one. I've not seen that.
You have to see it, because he takes a tanker truck and makes it a living, breathing creature that is out to get this poor individual played by Dennis Weaver. The camera angles, the images, the way they make the truck, it's exhaust roaring like a monster that's out to kill this individual. It is a great movie, and it was on ABC as part of their, like, they had these Tuesday and Wednesday night movies of the week, and he released that, and it is sheer genius. You have to watch it. It is it's a marvelous movie. So yeah, he's done a lot. He made a TV series called Amazing Stories, which gave a lot of young directors and writers access to it. And yes, his multitude, if you look at the broad spectrum of films he's made, he really is much better than James Cameron. But James Cameron made movies that sold. So, you know, what is it? You look at the best car, that does more of the most efficient, fuel efficient, roomy, seats a lot of people, does all those things? Or is it the flashy car that sells and makes a lot of money? It's what is,
Depends on what your measure of success is.
It's hard. It's really is hard to say. I think Steven Spielberg, if you're going to have to pick one, you have to say Steven Spielberg just because of the sheer number of hits.
Yeah.
And I feel like when James Cameron releases a movie, people are like, yeah, it could be really good or it could be okay. But generally speaking, if Steven Spielberg releases something, it's like, oh, we've got to go see the new Spielberg movie.
That's right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. But then, Peter Jackson, he made the Lord of the Ring films super successful, very well done, and beloved by people.
But then he also made The Hobbits, which...
And Christopher Nolan. He's made a lot of very interesting films. He's got another one coming out this year that I want to see, Oppenheimer, which if he does
I want to see that.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be really good. And J.J. Abrams has, thank goodness he helped move along the Star Trek franchise by reinventing it in his own particular way.
But this guy just offers him just a little piece of feedback for J.J. Just if you start something, just continue with it.
Yeah,
that's all.
No, you're absolutely right. He has a tendency of oh, what was that? Squirrel, and he looks over and he's off to another project. And it's what's happened to him many times, even with his TV shows like Alias. And Lost, where the shows start out really great because he's really involved with it, and then he loses interest. He goes to someplace else, and then other people have to pick up the pieces, and it's just not the same any longer. You're absolutely right.
Yep.
So you got to be committed. So, well, any last thoughts about Mr. Cameron that you want to share?
I'm in a T2 mood now. I have to go and find that.
Yeah,
I do want to see The Way of Water. The Way of
I have seen it. I did see it at the theater.
Of Water. Yes.
The Way of Water. I did see it, and I won't say anything. I leave it to make your own decision as to if you like it or not like it, whatever. But it's been it's already made over $2 billion. So the world loves it because they were waiting for James Cameron. I don't know what.
Do they love it, or was it just because everybody was curious about it?
Yeah,
it's not like a Maverick thing where all I heard when Maverick came out was how good Maverick was. But I feel like I haven't heard that about. I've heard Avatar 2 is pretty good.
Well, that's because Maverick is a much better movie than the original Top Gun.
That is true.
It's a much better developed story, adventure. Though, of course, it is Star Wars also.
It was Star Wars.
It was Star Wars, yeah. Right down the trench. Got to find the target, 5mm, a 5-meter target. Oh, my targeting system has failed. I'm just going to have to use my emotions to launch. But
also, Star Wars also got that for World War II stuff. So that's the topic of the episode today.
Well, right. See, they just all
it's circular.
Things come from things, and that's okay.
Yep, exactly. We're inspired. But nobody has inspired the Big Sci-Fi Podcast because it's original. It's because
no one has ever talked about science fiction on a podcast before. No one's ever talked
about science fiction on a podcast before, and no one's ever talked about Star Wars or Star Trek or any of these things. We're the original,
the very first ones,
the very first. I think we better make sure our attorneys are ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and with that, we come to the conclusion of another episode of the greatest podcast of all time, the Big Sci-Fi Podcast. If you agree with that thought, and we sure hope you do, please share it with us on Facebook, on Instagram, Trek Geeks, where we're now a part of that wonderful group of podcasters. Send us your thoughts to the Big Sci-Fi Podcast at gmail.com, and we look forward to your opinions and thoughts. They help us to shape our product and what we do. And as always, I leave you with this parting thought. Keep watching the sky. Live long and prosper.